But these that we have right in front of us here, lower at the base of the canyon wall, are between 6,000 and 2,000 years old. The oldest are typically on the far side, and what it is the interpretation of this is passed down. There's no written documentation of what this all means, and you can actually get different tribes to come up here and talk about it, and each tribe will have their own interpretation of what they think it is. But we've got kind of a standard that we can give. So we'll start on the far left-hand side. Those are the oldest. Those were done by the Desert Archaic people, more hunter-gatherer folks, so they were only down here for a very short time. They'd spend time probably hunting the bighorn sheep or gathering any food products that they could find here. And what they're telling us is right there is the Steppes Trail that's just around the corner. And then below the Steppes Trail, I believe is a deity. Now the natives had a lot of deities or gods. They'd have a god for the sun, they'd have a god for rain, they'd have a god for different types of animals. I believe that's one just for the bighorn sheep. And there's bighorn sheep in front of that. And the first one is a ram with horizontal lines. Next behind that is a female ewe with vertical lines. And they're showing that she's giving birth. And that may be because what they want to represent is let people know is don't overhunt what was down here, right? Leave the females so that they can continue to reproduce and they'll have food down here for as long as they need it. Behind that is a ram, adolescent ram. And then the next figure is this, it's a man with his arms hanging down. Typically when their arms are down like that, that means that it's somebody that passed away. The fact that that person that passed away got a figure put on the wall means they must have been high up in the tribe or the organization, either the chief or a medicine man or maybe one of the elders of the group. It also represents that they're probably buried in this area as well. In the next portion here, these are done more by the ancestral Puebloan or the Anastasi. The first one I'll talk about, it looks like the sideways W. We think that represents the constellation Cassiopeia. When Cassiopeia was in the sky, typically in the spring, it probably meant it was time to start planting because they would use this flat area here to plant beans, squash, and corn. And then the next one, you can see all of these animals with their horns facing forward. Those aren't bighorn sheep. Those are actually what they call antelope, or pronghorn is the proper name. Pronghorn don't come down into the canyon. They stay up on the rim. But this is representing that there are plenty of them up there. Also, you might not see it, but there's another set of pronghorn right down by the dirt. Those almost look identical, as if somebody had a stencil when they made that. And about 6 years ago, those weren't visible. The stone wall wasn't here. They put up the stone wall to keep people back from the petroglyph. And once that happened, the wind changed, and the wind started blowing away that sand, and those became visible. Now we anticipate that they probably were not laying on their belly when they did that. They were probably standing up right at eye level. So there's probably many more petroglyphs down below, covered up by the dirt, but the Park Service will not excavate those. Then over here on the far right-hand side, those are done more by the Paiute or the direct relatives of the Paiute. The Paiutes are the ones that still come down here to worship their ancestors. They have a reservation up in Utah where they are able to come down here fairly frequently. The first one I'll talk about is it looks like this man with 4 legs. It's actually a man teaching his son how to hunt, and the way they depicted children was just half a body or just the legs. Next is this larger petroglyph. It looks like a bighorn sheep is looking up and a bighorn sheep looking down. Some people think it's kind of a yin and yang symbol. Others say it's looking up to the light because that bighorn sheep has actually got an eye on it, whereas the one that's looking down into the darkness does not have an eye. They can't see. And then this W, we call that a cowboy glyph. That's only about 150 years old. So somebody came down here, scribbled their name, initial onto the wall. A lot of people like to say, well, maybe John Wesley Powell did that because his friends called him Wes. There's no documentation in any of his journals of him ever scratching his initials onto the wall. So he was pretty meticulous on his note-taking of what he did, and there's no mention of that. And then down below it, you can see in this green lettering, it's actually somebody